We analyze the Baltimore Ravens signing Mike Davis and more with a very special guest next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. And here with us on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show is our usual Friday guest coming with us on Wednesday, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. Q, I love the red-pink tint you got going on in the background there. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Yes, it is called red light. It is some near infrared. It is some beautiful plain old red, but it comes across that pink kind of hue, and I am basking in the glow of it, trying to make sure my mitochondria is in good working order for the show.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, it gives a nice little aesthetic here for this show tonight. So I'm excited to talk with you here. And in this first segment, Q, it's pretty fitting that you're here considering our back and forth about Devonta Freeman and these Ravens veteran running backs. And my I guess, hero of the running back room last year, Devonta Freeman, it feels like him and Latavius Murray and obviously Tyson Williams, who we'll get to, will not be back with the team because the Ravens have added another veteran running back by the name of Mike Davis, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, has played for a bunch of years in this league and has had success. And now the Ravens will be rolling into this year, it feels like, with four really quality options, considering who does or doesn't make the roster. But Q, what were your overall thoughts on the Davis signing overall? And were you shocked that the Ravens brought in a veteran after drafting Tyler Beatty in the 6th round?
No, not at all. If you look at the history of this Ravens team, when it comes to running backs in general, they love their veteran players. They recognize that the running back position, it's the easiest to acclimate yourself into the NFL, but it's also the hardest when it comes to nuances because you're part running back, part receiver, part offensive lineman. That pass protection is the biggest one. When you're going back there, and if it was Joe Flacco and Ray Rice or whomever in that era, if you're now in this era where the Lamar Jackson and the running back scenario and Lamar dropping back to pass, you best believe this to be true. You need to pass protect. You need to put yourself in a good position. And if you do, you're going to be on the field. If you don't, you're going to be on the sideline and looking at Coach Harbaugh, wondering when you're going to get a chance to get your opportunity. The bottom line is that, this is a team that we've seen with Greg Roman's style of offense. It's a heavy, dominant run offense, and it is imperative that you have a stable of backs. You got two backs that are their horses that have been put on IR. Obviously, they're going to be on the PUP list heading into the season. You need your stable of backs. You need your veteran players to kind of balance out the equation, if you will. And at the same time, you need a veteran back that has a little bit more life in his legs outside of a good, oh my God, that was the best 8-yard run ever, when we've been accustomed to 30, 40, 50-yard runs down the football field as the norm for the Baltimore Ravens. Hint, hint, Freeman is not back.
Yeah, we were missing those 40, 50-yard runs. I know the everybody who covered the team, watched the team, it was different not having those 40, 50-yard explosive runs coming each and every week from players like Dobbins and Edwards, and even going back to, Mark Ingram type player. But Q, one of the players in 2021 who it felt like was just going to have this huge year based off of his preseason was Tyson Williams. Now, played well in the opening game against Las Vegas, but then quickly found himself in John Harbaugh's doghouse, never really got out of it. And now the news yesterday that the Ravens ended up withdrawing his tender. So he is now a free agent. He's available to sign with any team. Did that shock you at all? The fact that Tyson Williams is not likely at this point, with the tender being withdrawn, going to be back in Ravens uniform?
You never say never, but it is highly unlikely he's going to be back. I think there is this fine line with John Harbaugh of, again, with the veterans and even with young players and having a stable of running backs. But there's this fine line of, go out there, do what you need to do. If you make a mistake, okay. If you keep making the same mistake twice, then we got ourselves an issue. Pass protection, which I already talked about, is one thing. Putting the ball on the ground, giving it up, that's going to put you in the doghouse as well. And I think for Tyson, he never quite got the hang of, being out there, being a pro, understanding how to play just smart, strong, play like a Raven style running back football. And then you couple the fact that this is a league where you have a limited roster. You aren't the starter. You better play special teams. Didn't quite embrace himself in that regards either. So, what have you done for me lately? What's your stock looking like? And whether it be Mike Davis or heck, even for that matter, you look at Devontae Freeman last year, he replaced him. He was supposed to be the guy heading into the season, the Raven veteran running back, because he knew the offense and all that. But eventually he just kind of faded into the sunset. And I think a large part of that has to do with the fact that he wasn't dependable. And anytime you have some doubts from a coaching staff standpoint of what a player can or cannot do, then that's going to limit his playing time. And in off season, it's about the business. Business means that, if there's somebody else who's better than you and you're going through evaluation process as a GM or a scout, and you're looking at your roster and you're like, look, coach, we got somebody better than Tyson. Here's what we need to do to get this kid on the team. We're going to do this. That's what happened. And that's the stark reality of having to always be productive and not just assuming you have a spot on the team.
Right, yeah, and special teams such a huge part of what this Ravens team does. Obviously, is pass protection. It's the little things, and even putting the ball on the ground. We know that backs who have put the ball on the ground have had kind of these benched moments where they'll sit out for a series or not get as much workload for a couple drives or a half. But for Williams, I feel like a bunch of this stuff coming together into one, and then you didn't really see him a ton for the rest of the year. But Q, it seems like with Davis and even with Tyler Beatty, the Ravens have put more of a focus on getting backs on their roster that can catch the football out of the backfield. And I think that it was a thing that we were going to see a lot in 2021 with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. I know both running backs talked before the year about how they were excited to kind of get into that aspect a little bit more. But do you feel like now with these running backs who can actually get the football out of the backfield, do some stuff with it, that we will see a lot more of that in 2022?
More backs out of the backfield as far as
catching the football.
Pass. This offense, in my opinion, is going to be that 2019 ballistic offense. I think what they've done with the drafting of the two tight ends, Likely and Kolar, obviously you got Mark Andrews. I think the reshifting and tooling of the offensive line. If I'm Gus Edwards, if I'm J.K. Dobbins, Beatty, obviously we talk about Davis. You know what? We got Lamar Jackson. He's that extra threat every single time he has the ball. That extra threat takes pressure off of me. It gives me a chance to have a level of freedom, because there's going to be some confusion of where is the ball. I'm telling you, we're looking at the return of bully ball. That's the bottom line.
It would be something really nice to see if the Ravens were to kind of get back to that run first offense completely. I know the Ravens obviously last in pass attempts in both 2019 and 2020. In 2021, they were 9th in pass attempts. So obviously I feel like injuries had to do a little bit with that, but it feels like if the Ravens can have that run first attack and then also kind of sprinkle the pass game in, because obviously Lamar Jackson is a great thrower of the football as well. I think that is something where, look, this team's strength is running the football. It doesn't mean they can't throw it. They can, but it's just, you play to your strengths and you let the other stuff kind of sprinkle in. So if the Ravens are a bit more balanced with the run first aspect of it coming back, I think that'd be great. But can you kind of talk about that bully ball? Do you feel like the Ravens could keep 4 running backs this year in Dobbins, Edwards, Beatty, and Davis? There's still other guys competing as well, like Justice Hill, etc. But could you see this maybe instead of the Ravens keeping 3 running backs and 6 wide receivers, you could see them keeping 4 running backs and maybe 5 wide receivers?
1,000%. You're trying to, as best you can, bulletproof yourself from injury. No team is immune to it, no matter what you do. There's going to be, it's the nature of the business. It's a collision sport. Now, with that said, from a receiver standpoint, what are you trying to do? Because you're looking at the tight end position that we just talked about, as far as having multiple looking personnel packages with tight ends on the field. You're going to have, your running backs, two of them, your top two, coming back from injury. So that's not going to be, the first couple of weeks of the season. That I don't foresee them being Adrian Peterson-esque and being able to just get back in the flow and be 100% ready to go. I think there's going to be a process. I think the more running backs you have for a run-centric offense is the best to help yourself. And so, there's that. I think also from a receiver standpoint, you got a group that's very similar. And I think it's important, I know they got a lot of free agents, undrafted rookie free agents by design that are a little bit taller, larger, bigger receiver compared to who they have with Duvernay and Porche and Tyler Wallace. And obviously, Rashad Bateman is not necessarily a considered a small receiver by any stretch, but we're talking like, that 6'3" kind of a guy. But it'll come down to that fourth running back and or sixth wide receiver. What is it like when it comes to offensive line, and what is it like coming from defensive back scenario? Because from an offensive line standpoint, there's one thing as far as depth, and then from a defensive back standpoint, hey man, I can always put somebody out there defensive back wise, special teams. And so, all right, if I'm a receiver, I'm going to be the odd man out if I am not like a baller on special teams.
Right. We do know, again, how much this team does value special teams and players that can play that as well as a high level at their original positions. So if there's, let's say, a running back that can't play special teams and there's a cornerback or a safety that can, they might go with that safety. And just because of the special teams value, obviously Justice Hill made a name for himself on special teams. Miles Boykin made a name for himself on special teams, and that got them active on game days to contribute on special teams. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I do like the Davis signing. I think it's not the needle mover move. It's a veteran depth move that I think can pay dividends if the Ravens decide to keep 4 running backs, which I think there is a realistic possibility considering that we could see this offense go back to more of a run first team. We're going to head into our first break. When we get back, we'll be diving into your mailbag questions. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Still a ton to talk about on Locked On Ravens, but I first want to tell you a bit about Built Bar. And summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. You can throw them in your bags or in your kids' backpacks and make sure that everyone has a Built Bar so you're fueled for your summer adventure. The best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious, so no more sacrificing delicious food for health. All Built Bars and Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate, and so with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So go to Built.com, get all your favorite flavors, including banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. We're back here. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Allstriker still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. We're going to dive into some mailbag questions. I'm excited to get into them with you and answer them. And we got a good 2 segments full of them today. So we'll talk about those both in the second and in the third segment. And first, we're going to start off here with a question from Ofi Defoy, who says, hey, Kevin, again, thanks for the passion and the great work. The AFC North is one of the most difficult divisions and the most difficult conference. In your opinion, how many wins do we need to get to the playoffs? Thanks and have a nice day. Well, thank you. And you have a nice day too. But Q, this is a question that obviously the AFC, a very tough conference with the many additions coming in from the NFC, such as Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Khalil Mack, all these players. But do you feel like the Ravens now in this talented, not only AFC, but AFC North, what's the win total for you for the Ravens to get to the playoffs? Obviously, this team finishing 8-9, that was not enough last year. What do you think this team needs to get into the playoffs this season?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is to say 10-7. I think more realistically, it'll be a potential health look. Then it's a 12 to 13 win season. Um, Slow start because of health with certain positions. Some young guys getting acclimated. Yeah, it's going to be that 10 to 11 win season, but I'm always every single year when we're in the prediction game, I've always favored the higher win total, and I think this team is built, in the locker room, chemistry wise, key pieces, all those buzzwords. Young guys. I think this is a potential 13 win season.
Yeah, I can see anywhere in the 12 to 14 win range being very realistic for them. And in this AFC, where I remember back in 2020, we were all wondering with this Ravens team having a good enough record to get into the playoffs, it really came down to the final couple of weeks because there were so many good teams in the AFC. So now this year, where it feels like there will be at least like 3 or 4 teams that have all this talent, have a really good record, but might not even make it. I think for the Ravens to have that 13, 14 win season, hopefully, and that's a big bounce back number considering they only won 8 games. But, we have to face reality with the fact that they were injured a lot of the time. They had a lot of key injuries. It's not an excuse because all teams went through it. But, I mean, at the same time, it drastically affected how well this team was able to perform, put a cap on their ceiling per se. So I'm going to say to make the playoffs, probably 12 wins isn't 100% guarantee. I'd be shocked if a 12-5 team didn't make the playoffs in the AFC, but then you start to get down to like 11-10. That's still pretty good. That's a pretty good shot, but it depends on the rest of the AFC, which is going to be such a difficult conference this year. So I'm going to go like 12 isn't 100% guarantee for that, and that's where I'll go with that. But our next question here is from Eric Zikafus Jr., who says, if Tylan Wallace gets an opportunity as a number 2 wide receiver this year with Duvernay and Prochet alternating in the slot, what would be your expected ceiling or stat line for him, or just expectations in general? So yeah, Q, with Tylan Wallace, a very intriguing receiver, honestly, someone who I did not expect him to be available in the 4th round for the Ravens. Got a little bit of run in 2021, not a ton though, but it feels like he is in line for a very big increase in role. So what are your expectations for him based off of what you saw and what you think he can be at the NFL level for 2022?
Let me steal a little line from what we know from what Hollywood Brown talked about. This offense isn't necessarily a high target receiver centric offense. This offense is a high target tight end centric offense. And if we're talking bully ball, Tylan Wallace is going to get in there. He's going to get some opportunities, but it's going to be more along the lines of if he gets, put it this way, if he gets 30 catches, wow, he's had a huge year. And then it's up to him with the run after catch, and it's up to him whether or not, if it's in a red zone and he's coming up with contested catches and he's making big plays. But that's pretty much the easy view of what I would see for Tylan.
Yeah, I think for now, Wallace slots in as the number 4 guy, just behind Bateman and Duvernay and Prochet, just based off of experience. Because, when looking at what Tylan Wallace can do on the field, he's very talented, and I think is someone who shouldn't be underrated, because I feel like he is very underrated. But I think it also depends if the Ravens bring in a veteran wide receiver. If Jarvis Landry comes in, if Julio Jones comes in, Will Fuller, some of those guys that I know you and I have talked about, that will do something to the role of a Tylan Wallace or a James Prochet. I'm not saying they'll be completely just alienated and they won't get any targets or catches, but that'll probably bump them down on the depth chart a little bit, and they might not have as many targets, as opposed to, hey, the Ravens are rolling with the guys they have this season. So for me, I think realistic expectations for Tylan Wallace. I mean, they haven't signed anybody yet, so I'll go that way. Maybe you're looking at 15 catches, 200 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, something along those lines, which could be realistic depending on, again, if the Ravens do go back to bully balls, and we've talked about in this episode, Q, and also just looking at the rest of the Ravens wide receivers in general. But next, a question from Shane Carty asks, which game in the upcoming season are you most excited for and why? I'm most geared up for the Bills matchup. Also, do you see the franchise adding another receiver in free agency with all the buzz around Jarvis Landry potentially being looked at? Is that a divisional game for you, Q? Is it the Bengals? Do you look at the Bills? Is there something else that you're kind of keeping your eye on for that matchup you're really looking forward to this year?
Every time we look at the AFC North and you look at playoff implications, it's always about, getting wins in the AFC North. So, yeah, the Bills game, that's, more along the lines of what everybody is kind of like looking at. I'm not saying the fluff, because it is a really good, opportunity to kind of, establish the overall AFC. Clearly, you look at what Jacksonville did early on to Buffalo, caused Buffalo to have to travel to Kansas City. We know what happened at Kansas City in overtime. I think it would have been a big change if now Kansas City's going out to Buffalo and playing them up at Orchard Park. So, yeah, who's the king of the North? The kings of the North, they clearly are the Cincinnati Bengals. I think this team, Eric DaCosta, he had to realize, look, we got to rethink things, retool things, look at what makes us tick and go from there. The defense has been in an upgrade mode. Uh, Regardless of who was on the field, they wore a Ravens jersey, period. The Bengals whooped up on this team. That's the team where I think now you want to be the bully, beat the bully, and the bully on the block is the Cincinnati Bengals.
Right, I am very much looking forward to all the AFC North matchups this year. Pittsburgh, obviously, Ravens, Steelers. You can never go wrong with that matchup.
Trubisky.
Oh yeah, hey, Lamar Jackson versus Mitch Trubisky. Sign me up for that for a Ravens guy here, right? I think that favors, but you can never count out the Steelers. Mike Tomlin has that team ready to go every single week. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I think these Bengals matchups. There's been so much talk about just how badly the Ravens got beat both of those times against the Bengals, and the Bengals took it to them, right? I mean, credit to them. The Ravens didn't show up to play both those games. The Bengals did, and that's what happened. So this is the opportunity for them now to go get their revenge and show that, hey, last year wasn't the year we wanted, but this year we're back, we're healthy, we're ready. So it does all depend on health. I'm excited for those Cincinnati games too. And then the second part of the question, do you see the franchise adding another receiver in free agency with all the buzz around Jarvis Landry potentially being looked at? We've talked about Jarvis Landry, Q. I know we've talked about others as well, but do you feel like they will bring in a veteran wide receiver, especially with the new rumblings that maybe the Ravens are interested in Jarvis Landry?
I would love for them to bring in Jarvis Landry. I think Jarvis would be a great fit. I think Jarvis, for what he does as far as, again, we're not talking high volume catching, but he can be that guy. I think he's a strong run after catch guy. I think from a blocking standpoint, I think he's a really dependable guy in that regards. Overall, he's a very strong veteran, Pro Bowl, upper tier receiver that I think would be a strong fit and complement to what Bateman brings to the table.
Yeah, and I know there is, like, when looking at redundancies, like Jarvis Landry is not a big-bodied receiver. He's not someone who can potentially stretch the field up. But to me, he is the most talented receiver left in this free agent pool. And I think that when you bring in that talent, you just kind of figure it all out. And the Ravens, they can figure it all out because they would have a very nice complement. I mean, a receiver room of Jarvis Landry, Rashad Bateman, Tylen Wallace, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet does not sound that bad. I mean, it sounds really good. And I'm not saying that the receiver room now is like this terrible thing, because it's not. They have talent there too. But I think if you bring in a veteran like Landry, it just adds so much to what you can do on the offensive side of the ball. We'll head into our final break here now, though. When we get back, we'll be diving into our final batch of mailbag questions. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And we'll be right back. Still a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. Diving into these last bit of mailbag questions, we actually have 3 here from Positive Vibes 0611. So I'll run them down here and we'll talk about each of them. So the first one, will the Omar whistle be back this year? Now, the Omar whistle, obviously a tribute that the Ravens put on, and I feel like it added so much to the beginning of the game, and it's something that a lot of fans really enjoyed. Would you feel like that is going to be coming back this year? Obviously, we don't know, but is that something you would like to see back at the stadium?
It's crazy. I think the production team for the Ravens, for what they do at the stadium, they strive for excellence. They strive for uniqueness. They strive to be that number one team when it comes to the fan experience. They leave no stone unturned. And when they first pulled it out against the Kansas City Chiefs, like, I got chills and I was like, okay, this is on. The whistle, so in other words, there needs to be that tradition of something that syncs everything up to say you're here in Baltimore, you're about to get whooped. You had the tradition of Ray Lewis and what he brought. Honestly, I am somewhat surprised that I think they won some kind of award. Maybe it was like an Emmy or something with the production of The Flock with Ray Lewis leading the way. And I was like, man, could you imagine that being like the establishment of the, hey, we're about to do this, and you change up, one or two highlight pieces to correspond with the guys coming out of the tunnel. But again, like the whistle has its place. I think it's great. I think it says Baltimore, and I'm hoping, perhaps that's going to be, the thing that the Ravens production keeps as the consistency for establishing saying, yo, welcome to the vault. The vault is closed. You in trouble.
I think it should stick. I mean, it's something that I agree with you. It kind of like adds this personal touch. It's something that, again, a great tribute. And I feel like when you think about Baltimore, you feel that you walk into M&T Bank Stadium, you're kind of anticipating that. And it gets everybody fired up and ready to go. So I feel like it's something that really should stick, and we'll see if they do end up keeping it. But I am on team keep the Omar whistle for sure. But Positive Vibes 0611 asks next, if we don't make any more moves, do we have enough? So Q, as the roster stands right now, obviously the team adding Mike Davis yesterday, but assuming it just sticks the way it is, no more additions, do you feel like the Ravens have enough to make noise in this AFC and potentially make it and win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, well, last year, when you listen to the guys and what they felt, they were like. I think now, again, the retooling is in place. I think this is a squad that knows they're good. I think this is a squad that gets pushed. When I say pushed, I'm saying that John Harbaugh is like, hey, what do we need to do to get better? Competition is going to be ever present. If competition happens and we feel there's another guy that's going to win out, then so be it. He's going to be that guy. So um, lots of excitement. I concur with the excitement, and I think this team is a playoff ready team. It's up to Lamar Jackson and them when it comes to the actual art of advancing through the playoffs and getting a shot at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I do too. And those additions that you have, I mean, they're not additions by free agency. They're additions by guys getting healthy. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Marcus Peters. They're not technically guys that are new to the team, but they didn't play in 2021. So you get those guys back, and I think it's really, really good as well. And Q also, Positive Vibes 0611 asks, does Roman get a whole year regardless of how the offense looks? And for me, if the Ravens struggle to like a 1-4, 1-5 start, 2-4 start, there could be change potentially, and that could be Greg Roman. But Q, do you see Greg Roman getting the full year regardless of what happens, whether they do well or struggle?
Oh my gosh! I mean, yeah, he got the get out of jail free card, but history has shown that John Harbaugh has made changes during the year. Heck, they won a Super Bowl with Cam Cameron being ousted and Jim Caldwell being replacing him. Mark Trestman came and went. There have been some coordinators that have come and gone, and Gary Kubiak, I think, was the best fit for what the Ravens like to do, and unfortunately, the Ravens couldn't get it done against a New England Patriots team because defensive back issues. Seems like that always seems to come into play when it comes to playoff football. I think this. Greg Roman, if he is, bully balling it and no one is able to stop him and stop this offense, look out. If it's a scenario where they're crushing it and they're scoring 35, 40 points at a clip and they're getting beat in that regards, then you got to look at Mike McDonald and, maybe chalk it up to, well, he's a young coach, or his team is not really fully understanding the way of nuance for him as a signal caller. Okay, well, if that's the case, then you get a little bit of a reprieve. Day one, young player, or not player, but young coach, young coordinator. So it depends. I think if it's an offensive thing, offense doesn't have the continuity of it, then sure. But if it isn't, then you're going to see bully ball stay. You're going to see bully ball thrive, and Greg Roman will be all right.
Yeah, and speaking of Greg Roman, self-taught Gardner asked, with all the stuff surrounding Marquise Brown, the other former players, stating the offense is not a good offensive scheme, how do you feel about the Greg Roman offensive era in Baltimore, in your honest opinion? And I would love to hear other opinions of some of the others in Baltimore media. So, would you ask about how they feel about the Greg Roman offense? So I'm going to ask you, Q, about this Greg Roman offense and about what you have felt like it has been so far in this era of, I guess, Greg Roman offense. Do you feel like this has been successful? Has it been a failure in your opinion? What's your overall opinion of the Greg Roman offense?
Non-traditional, explosive, dominant, non-traditional, explosive, dominant, non-traditional. People get injured. You ain't so explosive. You ain't so dominant because you're non-traditional. Oh, gee, did I say non-traditional? Yeah, I did. Look, it's not the Rams. It's not Cincinnati. It's not Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. It's what they feel is really a great fit for coach and player. And when you look at from a player perspective, they were the number one offense with Lamar Jackson, the league MVP. Last year, they were scheduled to be on that pace again. And then you have Tyler Huntley having to come in, Johnson having to come in because of injuries and inconsistencies along the offensive line. Running back group was a group of retired folks who, if they were in their prime, my goodness, they would have been amazing, but they weren't. So you had, some, respectfully saying retreads. This is the offense. So see the bigger picture. That's my take.
Right. I think Greg Roman is a good offensive coordinator. I think that he has done a lot of good things in Baltimore. There are drawbacks to his offense. I mean, as any offensive coordinator will have drawbacks to their offense. And, there are things that he can work on himself, but I feel like the passing game improved, in my opinion, during the 2021 season in the early part. Obviously, once stuff started happening, the wheels kind of fell off and that the offense kind of cratered a little bit. But there were promising things that this offense did over the course of the first half of that 2021 season. I think with their guys back, they can build on that. If they do go back to bully ball, they can build on that. Plus, the passing offense they had, they understand that they can be a little more balanced than just being, hey, we're going to run the ball 45 times. And that's worked for them in the past. But, to be able to win a Super Bowl, I feel like you do need to have that high power run offense and the high powered passing offense. So balance would be awesome. I think Greg Roman is a good offensive coordinator. But again, if he can't, you mentioned the get out of jail free card. If he can't produce with the players back and the players healthy, then maybe there is a situation where he gets let go early on in the year, because you mentioned John Harbaugh does change his coordinators when stuff isn't going right, and it has helped them in the past. So we'll see if that ends up what being happens. But I feel like for Greg Roman, he will get a shot. He will get a shot to perform with this offense, and we'll see what ends up happening for sure. But that's all I have for you here today, Q. Thanks so much for joining me here on the hotline with the red hotline in the back there. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm excited to see what this Ravens team can do, but also the schedule release and what teams the Ravens will be playing when.
Yeah, the schedule release last year, remember, it was just kind of a crazy, weird, home and away. And at the end of the year, you had a whole bunch of games, including the Pittsburgh, Cleveland, was it Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, with Cleveland having a bye week? Was that
Yep,
or was it the other way? Yeah, right. So it was just odd, and I'm hoping this year isn't so quite of an odd season. Obviously, the primetime games probably aren't going to be as much because you didn't make the playoffs. So, to the victors go the spoils, and now the Bengals are going to be the big boy on the block with the primetime games. Let's see how they handle it. But, looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this Ravens team, their fourth place schedule will be coming out fully on Thursday night. So I'm excited to see how that all plays out. But thanks again, Q. I really do appreciate it. That's all I have for you here today on Locked on Ravens. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens content. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And I will see you tomorrow.